Over the last few years, we've gotten some amazing Spider-Man content. From his introduction to the MCU through Captain America Civil War, to the amazing Across the Spider-Verse movies, and of course, you cannot forget when all three live-action Spider-Man came together in one movie with Spider-Man No Way Home. Well, now you can include the newest Disney Plus show, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spiderman, to that list. One thing I really liked about this series was that it told the Peter Parker Spider-Man story in a more modern and kind of unique style way. For example, they got rid of the big, bold, in-your-face bully of Flash Thompson, because realistically, in this modern era that it is set in, and in this modern era that we're in right now, you don't really see that big, in-your-face, shove you into the locker style bully that you would normally get. So not having him there as a character is actually perfectly fine, because it doesn't really change much for the overall story of what's going on in Peter's life. Also, I really like how they made Osborn as one of the main mentors to Peter, because it makes it a more interesting dynamic of the story, and it changes the good guy part, and it adds more depth as Osborn as a character as well. But I'm not really here to talk about the show as a whole. Right now, I'm just talking about the biggest holy crap, oh my god moments that I had while I was watching the show. But before we start, if you like comic books, anime, any of that fun nerdy stuff, after you're done watching this video, maybe consider checking out my channel to find more content just like this. So now, let's get into it. The first one was when Osborn found out that Peter is Spider-Man.
So, you're Spider-Man.
This moment definitely caught me off guard and was definitely surprising, because we knew that Peter was asked directly from Osborn to meet him specifically, and the rest of the staff throughout Oscorp didn't really believe this, so it kind of just went on throughout a regular day. So even though Peter thought that he was being called up to Osborn's office to get kind of scolded for what was happening throughout the day, the damage that was done, being late from coming back from his break, that type of thing, he thought he was getting fired from this internship. I didn't expect it to be what it ended up being, but I also didn't think it was going to be anything overly negative, because we knew that Peter had this direct message from Osborn to come meet with him. So therefore this was made to seem like it was going to be what he was originally going to contact him about. This next one was when they revealed who the creator of all these crazy weapons was, and realizing that it was Otto Octavius. Man, I felt so dumb, because I should have realized who this was right from the beginning when they first showed the symbol. Because not only is it an OO for Otto Octavius, but it's also together, and it makes an 8 when you turn it this way, which an 8 for octopus. It just makes so much sense, and I felt so dumb and so weirdly embarrassed to myself that I didn't realize right from the get-go. Next was the arrival and fight with Daredevil. This was one of the best scenes of the show in general, because introducing Matt Murdock kind of shows the conspiracy of what is actually happening with Osborn and how far it was actually going to end up going. And just the fight in general was just phenomenal, because they showed Matt's kind of crazy choreography and fighting style, and being able to maneuver and dodge and kind of get away with what he had to do against fighting Spider-Man. It also really showed his cool powers of the echolocation style power that he has when he was able to dodge different parts of Spider-Man's attacks. And it really showed Spider-Man's unique fighting style as well. It was such a good kind of back and forth for both characters. So yeah, this scene was actually just quite interesting, because just seeing Daredevil in general and the pose that he had against the moon was very epic. He developed the story a little bit more by telling that Osborn is hiding something, and the fight between him and Spider-Man was very well choreographed and worked really well. It was so interesting, so hype. Next was when Nico found out that Peter is Spider-Man. So this wasn't that epic of a scene. It's more so on how she found out, considering it was Harry who told her, not Peter himself. It wasn't anything over the top for us as a viewer. It was more so on just how it affected her and Peter's friendship kind of moving forward in the show, and just how it's going to impact the show moving forward. This next one was something that was a little more subtle, but still quite interesting. It's the scene when Osborn and Peter were in the process of trying to figure out what power source Dr. Octavius was using to build the machines, the weapons that he's been giving to people. They ended up discussing and referencing different elements and different sources of power.
What about deuterium?
Not strong enough.
Tritium?
Even Octavius would have a hard time finding that.
Solar?
I doubt he's managed to harness the power of the sun.
Which is basically just the reference of the power of the sun in the palm of my hand, which is originally from Spider-Man 2.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
This is another one of those moments that was kind of sprinkled throughout the show that was references to other Spider-Man movies, other Spider-Man franchises. But this was one of the ones that was a little more subtle that you might have missed, and that I just thought was pretty neat. Next was the arrival of Scorpion at the warehouse. This was such a big, epic, crazy moment for quite a few reasons. One, obviously just because of how scary and menacing the Scorpion was when he first showed up, especially with the fact that it really showed off like the new ability of the tech that he has gotten, with being able to just deflect multiple bullets all at once and didn't even get a scratch on him was just crazy. Didn't even touch him at all. And with truly showing how epic and how much of a villain Scorpion has actually really become and has progressed throughout the series was just overly intense. And then not only on how crazy this fight and battle was, but this was also the first time that the two main stories kind of truly collided, with Peter and Lonnie's two stories coming together. And with this, there's Peter's realization that Lonnie is part of this gang, and it just surprises him and takes him by shock and awe. And for me, that was quite surprising just itself. The thing that makes this scene super crazy was the fight between Spider-Man and Scorpion, especially on how much back and forth it was, and the fact that Peter had to defend everyone. And the end of the fight when he gets stabbed and almost dies was overly intense, because not only was that just an epic and back and forth fight where he loses, it's the first time that he has this like scared, over the top, real human emotion because he just got stabbed and he doesn't know what's going on. And if it wasn't for Osborn saving him with the glider, he probably would have been killed by the Scorpion. So this was definitely one of the most intense, crazy, scary, interesting, over the top moments of the entire show. Next is one that's a little more of a subtle moment, but it still ends up being pretty big, pretty impactful for the show in general. And that's Osborn's line,
"With great power comes great respect. And if you don't have respect, you have nothing."
This is obviously a reference to the very famous "with great power comes great responsibility" line normally said by Uncle Ben. So that's what makes this line quite interesting. It's because it even builds up, it kind of slows down and even has the pause moment that we normally get from Uncle Ben. But the fact that it's Osborn being the one that's saying this, and he has that ego, that kind of mentality of trying to push and do better and get further, means that with great power comes great respect makes more sense coming from him. But it was definitely a line that threw me off guard when I first heard it. It definitely surprised me to hear. It was definitely shocking. But the thing that also makes this line quite interesting is the fact that in an earlier episode, when Osborn was talking about how him and Octavius kind of grew up in college together, and how he was explaining on how Octavius kind of demanded respect just for being smarter than everyone, a more intellectual type of person.
All because of his own arrogance. Because he couldn't stop believing that the world owed him something for his brilliance. Money, fame, respect. Even if he got all three, I don't think he'd be happy.
That he demanded respect, in a way kind of contradicts what Osborn was saying about great power comes great respect, because we're now seeing how Octavius has a lot of power with building these weapons and advancements and everything, yet he's not getting respect. He's actually on the end getting thrown into prison and losing respect and everything. But now, since it's Osborn, the one that has the power, he's the one who's pushing Peter to also use his power to therefore then gain respect. It's almost kind of contradictory to what he was saying about Osborn earlier in the season. So yeah, that one line of "with great power comes great respect" being changed from "with great power comes great responsibility ends up changing basically Peter's life and tone and thought process throughout the entire rest of the season. And it's quite interesting to see on how that one line change influences the whole show. Next is another bigger like, oh my god moment, and that was when Peter almost killed the Scorpion. This was big and interesting for a few reasons. Not only because obviously Spider-Man almost killing someone, that's really big and epic just in itself, but the reason behind it. Because of the previously mentioned with great power comes great respect line from Osborn, and the fact that he was basically remembering Osborn telling him that he has to push past his limits, not hold back, and basically just do what has to be done to become the stronger, better hero that he should have been, which shows the amount of influence Osborn had over him in this moment, and how far he could have actually gone to become a more vigilante like anti-hero than the good Spider-Man that we normally know. Another reason why this was really cool and interesting was because it was another kind of reference to another Spider-Man project, because of how Peter in this moment with holding the Scorpion's tail above his head and ready to slam it down on him was another reference to Spider-Man No Way Home, when Tom Holland Spider-Man almost killed Green Goblin with his own glider, same way by slamming it down on him. So that was a interesting kind of parallel moment that Peter Parker has had in a different universe again, which was a cool kind of just nod to the other Spider-Man projects that we've seen before. But the kind of most interesting part about this was the fact that it was Lonnie who was the one who stopped Peter in this moment, especially because it was Lonnie and the gang that were the original ones getting attacked by the Scorpion, and they were really ready to fight him off initially. So the fact that they were already in a kind of war against the Scorpions and the gang that Lonnie was in were already fighting and ready to kind of kill one another, but it's now Lonnie that is stopping Peter from killing the person that's been trying to kill him. It's kind of an interesting, like almost poetic justice in a way, that he's not worth actually killing in a way. So overall, this was a very interesting, impactful scene, not only for like someone like me, the viewer, just watching it, for just watching the intensity of it, and for the characters in the show and how this will be kind of an important memory and factor kind of moving forward into the next season for them. And lastly, again, one that's a little more subtle, when the Watcher showed up at the end of the final episode. The reason why this is kind of cool and interesting is because it makes the show a little more canon, quote unquote. Because a lot of people were saying that this show isn't really canon to anything because of how different it is compared to every other kind of Spider-Man project. But saying that kind of also doesn't really make any sense, because like every Spider-Man project is kind of canon in its own way because of the fact that it's multiversal, and the fact that the Watcher shows up at the end of this basically kind of solidifies the fact that it is, again, quote unquote canon, because then this ties it into the other Disney Plus project of What If. What If kind of goes into the other multiversal world where the Avengers and other Marvel characters kind of live their lives in a different way than what we're used to with either the 616 comics or like the MCU. So I thought this was just kind of like another little subtle nod that kind of connects it to the rest of the Marvel kind of world, but without it really affecting like the MCU, which it wouldn't really anyway, because it's obviously different, but it's just a little nice way of kind of connecting it, I guess. So those were some of my biggest, most interesting, kind of impactful moments from Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. What were some of the ones that I missed, or some of the moments that you found interesting? Let me know in a comment below. And remember, if you like me or any of the content that I make, maybe consider subscribing to the page. It'll help let you know when my next video comes out. Other than that, I had fun with this one. Hopefully you guys did as well. I will see you in the next video. Bye.